Hey, this is Neil's on Dynasty. This is Platina. That is Chloe. It is Monday. Have a great day. Bye. No. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be kind, helpful, and grateful. Sunny day out here today. Beautiful blue sky. It hasn't been like that for 2 weeks. Like, share, and subscribe. Be kind, helpful, and grateful. It's better than being a jerk. Make a New Year's resolution. You'll break it anyhow. You're going to be a jerk. Everyone is. Buy some silver platinums, crystallized osmium, because why the hell not? That's not what this is about, obviously. This is about, I don't know, it's not about cats. So what is this about? Oh, yeah. It's about BS, crybaby, crap, about some fictitious central bank digital currency. Single individual countries that are controlled and dominated by their leaders will be forced on a CDBC. Unfortunately, for those who believe CDBC is going to go worldwide, I have a report for you from countries and a continent that will go to war, most likely, to prevent CDBCs from happening because they want their freedom and sovereignty. And all the Western world seems to think that we don't need freedom and sovereignty. We're going to get a CDBC because we don't have no other choice because we're cowards and we don't fight for freedoms, which I agree. We pretty much are. But let's see who doesn't cower and who doesn't not fight for their freedoms and who will never have a CDBC.
In Mali and Burkina Faso, there is an attempt to create a currency that will cover that region. If you are not in control of your currency, it means that you cannot control your economy. And
Hold on. Wow, right off the bat. If you are not in control of your currency, you are not in control of your economy. Who wants to do a worldwide CDBC? That gives 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people control of all of the world's money. That's what CDBC is. I know you guys love CDBC. You're like, oh, it's the greatest. They can print money from nothing. I can have anything I want. I won't have to work. I'll have UBI. Blah. It's not coming. It's only going to come to a certain few countries with totalitarian dictatorships or radical leaders that can force their people to take it while they steal all the wealth of the nation. That's not going to happen in America. This guy here says all African countries want their sovereignty. Their sovereignty is their currency. Why the hell would they give up their freedom for a CDBC?
you will find, for example, in many African countries, even when loans are being borrowed from multilateral institutions such as the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank or even the European Union, the denominated currency is the United States dollars and, of course, recently the euro. The question that Africa must therefore ask is, how can we have an economy or economies which are dictated to from outside? Our conversation about the mother continent continues. And today we want to focus on a subject that is significant to the continent: currencies. One of the legacies of colonization is that all African countries inherited currencies that they did not create. And these currencies have become the medium via which the economies of African countries are judged and the media via which Africans conduct commerce.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. Do you believe in your ultimate wisdom and intelligence, Mr. American, Mrs. American, that these people here in this country who've never had control of their own economies because of segregation and all this other stuff, colonization of many countries, including Russia and China and America and Iran and Syria, but they've never had control of their own currencies. And now they're going to go from not having control of their own currencies to freedom of not having control of their own currencies because you say CDBC is coming. They say they don't want anything to do with it. That is one full continent. There's only 7 continents on this planet, 87 countries. Not a one of them wants a CDBC. But America, America, in our ultimate wisdom, as sitting around the house campfires, burning our houses down, saying, "Oh, CDBC is inevitable." The fuck it is. Too many people fighting it. They want their freedom. Currency is freedom.
Today, there are nearly 42 different currencies in the continent of Africa. And this, in and of itself, creates an environment that is very volatile because these currencies are not in many ways determined in terms of their value from the countries that run them, so that many African central banks may know the volume of money that is in the market. Many African countries may know the currencies that they want printed, but the most important thing that they ought to know, which is how do we control these currencies, is controlled from elsewhere. We already know, for example, the need.
Okay, so basically, they're saying they're trying to get away from control of the euro dollar and the American dollar over their countries, and everyone here in America believes that we're going to go to CDBC. It's inevitable. The whole world's going to do it. Nobody wants it, but it's inevitable. Nobody wants it, but it's inevitable. The stupidity of that thought process is ridiculous. The lack of knowledge of that you have to have that thought process is astounding. This is a report about how 87 countries in the world, for which there are only 187, don't want it because they've already had it in the form of colonial dollars, the euro franc, the AEU franc, whatever the hell it is in the Western Africa area. There's 15, 16 countries are controlled by the euro franc or the franco franc, basically controlled by European economies. They don't want that. Everyone in the world, including Americans, God loves all, believes that there's going to be a CDBC, and screw these people. They don't know what they want for their country. They've been dominated, controlled, and enslaved. We're going to continue that, and they're going to love it. Really? Wake up. Wake up, people, to reality.
Most of the former French colonies, the 14 of them in most of the Sahelian region and in Central Africa, most of the currencies are controlled from Paris, and there is a common currency called the CFA franc. The question is, therefore, how can Africa control her?
All of those countries don't have their own money system and are now currently on a CDBC. They're all currently on a CDBC. The CDBC is not known as a CDBC. It's known as a we don't control our own money. France does. The CFA franc in Central and West Africa control their money. They don't have control of their own countries. France does. They are sick of it. They have fought. They've kicked France out of this area here because they want their own currencies. And you feel that they'll accept a currency called a CDBC that they don't control, but the people that control them control when they're trying to get away from that control. That's just a stupid beyond stupid.
Economy in an environment where she does not control her currency. And since the year 1972, many African countries have pegged their currencies on the United States dollar. And the United States dollar is a fiat currency. It is a currency that is not backed by any reserve. It migrated long ago from the days of Richard Nixon, from the gold standard, and they can print as much as they desire, and most of it finds its way in the continent of Africa as the medium of transaction. There are countries in Africa, for example, Zimbabwe, which for a long time used the American dollar as the currency of trade. And in many African countries, on a daily basis, the central banks determine the strength or otherwise of their currencies depending on the mood of the dollar. As the saying goes, when the dollar sneezes, African currencies go into a coma. And this is something that is undesirable. If you are not in control of your currency, it means that you cannot control your economy. And
bingo. See, African nations realize that if you have a CDBC, you don't control your country. You don't control your economy. You are no longer a political leader. You just lost power. So they're trying to get power back from the Euro franc and FCA franc, and they're going to give that all up to be total slaves to a CDBC. Good luck with that one. I say that's bullshit. Not going to happen because of these guys.
You will find, for example, in many African countries, even when loans are being borrowed from multilateral institutions such as the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank or even the European Union, the denominated currency is the United States dollars and, of course, recently the euro. The question that Africa must therefore ask is, how can we have an economy or economies which are dictated to from outside? I remember so very fondly and famously this statement of Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah: "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and the rest will come unto you." We sought and obtained possibly the political kingdom, but the economic kingdom has not come because we are not in control of our currencies. And one may ask, why must we be in control of our currencies? We must be in control of our currencies because it is the medium of exchange. We must be in control of our currency because it is what determines how our economy is going to interact with the rest of the world.
And they're going to give that all up to a world central bank for a CDBC. My ass.
We must be in control of our economy because it is the summation of the goods and services that are available within a country. We must control our currency because when we borrow, how we are burdened by borrowing is determined by the character of our currencies. And many African countries indeed have recognized the need to have currencies that are strong. It is in that regard that there has been a spirited move to have common currencies in the region. The East African countries have always wanted to move towards a common currency. And it must be remembered until 1977, the three East African countries of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania had a common currency, which they pretty much controlled and which pretty much ensured that their economies were stable. We, of course, dissolved the East African community, and now there is once again a move towards having a common currency. In the West African region, until recently, there was a move to have a currency called the ECO, but that was torpedoed from Europe, as we know, particularly from Paris, and that was dead on arrival. And we in the Central African region, we now know with the recent events in Niger, in Mali, and Burkina Faso, there is an attempt to create a currency that will cover that region. And one hopes that ultimately there will be a currency that is going to envelop the entire continent of Africa so that Africans can transact without the midwifery of a currency whose printing they do not control, of a currency whose value they cannot determine.
So basically, he says, and this is what you say, they are going to refuse a CDBC because they do not have control over it, because the CDBC is to give control to the central banks. What he just said is, we are taking control away from the central banks. In direct 180 opposition to your belief that there's going to be a CDBC worldwide. There's not. There never will be in our lifetimes, unless there's some major nuclear war and half the world dies and we need to congeal as one to survive as a humanity. And minus something catastrophic like that, we're not going to have a centralized economic system on this planet, because these people in Africa have never had their freedom under this economic regime of the world that we have now. They've always been controlled. And what this gentleman is telling you is they're going to create in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, which is why I do the reports there. I've seen this coming. It's an experiment. It's a social experiment to see how African countries can control their own economy. And if it's successful in the Sahel regions, for which I've been doing lots of reports on, then the whole country of Africa will adopt that economic system. It is world-changing, economically revolutionary, genetic starting point of a new currency for the continent of Africa. That is why I do reports on West Africa. Y'all think I'm crazy, whatever. Oh, Africa, West Africa, yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's small. It's a social experiment that's going to change the world's economics future. That's why I do it. I'm not stupid. I just know things before they happen.
Of a currency which can be put into their markets and which can distort the markets in a manner that affects the economies of those countries or African countries by way of undermining their gross domestic product and indeed undermining their purchasing power. One of the things that I know, for example, now.
Basically, what he just said was the control of currencies by other countries, such as BRICS, controls the GDP of that country. So they can falsely manufacture a GDP of that country if they belong to BRICS or the American dollar system, and they're tired of that and they don't want it.
Is that Africans in the diaspora are now trying to come up with a currency which is denominated through resources such as solar. And I know, for example, that Zimbabwe has recently introduced a currency called the ZiG, which is denominated against the gold standard. And one hopes and, of course, believes that if this is coordinated, Africa will move from the Tower of Babel in which she now finds herself, where one moves from one country, you move from Kenya, you find the Ugandan shilling, the Tanzanian shilling, the Dilashi, the Naira, the Cedi, the Bear, and the Kwanza. This kind of scenario is not good for African economies, and the sooner we migrate from this environment, from multiple currencies, which are easy to manipulate, the safer Africa will be. It is important to talk about and to read.
So as soon as they get away from a CDBC controlled by others and not themselves, they will achieve their country and freedom and sovereignty. As soon as they move away from a CDBC type control, which is on them right now, do you really think they're going to accept a CDBC?
Reiterate the fact that if indeed Africa wants to give practical meaning to Africa continental free trade area, it can only succeed if there is a common currency which is in use throughout the continent of Africa. If we are going to have an Africa continental free trade area which is underpinned by the United States dollar or is underpinned by the euro, then we are going nowhere, because economic domination.
So if we are controlled by a worldwide CDBC, economic domination
will be determined by the currency that you are using on a daily basis.
Will be determined by the CDBC printer, not by the communities locally in Africa. That's exactly what he just said.
And a decision must be made at the level of the African Union that we must migrate from the dollar as the standard of determining the strength or otherwise of our currencies, and also migrate from the euro, so that whichever currency we create in the African continent, whether it is the Afro or whichever name we use, is going to be at the same table as other currencies, whether that currency is the dollar, whether that currency is the euro, whether that currency is the yuan, whether that currency is the rupee, whether that currency is the ruble, so that when those currencies meet in the international market, we are able to say that Africa is using a medium of trade which she controls and whose value she can determine. So from where I sit, if Africa is to realize our potential, one of the things that must be dealt with is currency. Let us migrate from these 42 currencies.
Let us not go to a CDBC and be controlled in slavery, basically is what he said.
That we have today. Let us move towards a single currency, and let us move, if we can't do it in one fell swoop, let it start regionally. And once we have it regionally, then...
Regionally is the Sahel region. And that's why that's why I'm doing the reports on West Africa. The regionally that he's talking about right now that will swoop Africa in one fell swoop is a gold-backed standard. Sorry, people. Hate it for you. BTC, hate it for you. CDBC people, hate it for you. Every African country is listening to that dude right there. They're listening to that dude right there. And he's telling you that they're going to have a currency exchange, come up with a currency for means of exchange for all African countries to use. They're going to start regionally. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. Combine as one, give you one currency backed by gold. That region works. If that social experiment in economics works in that region of West Africa, it will be adopted damn near overnight by every country in Africa, changing the economic system of the world. Hello, people. We don't control what's going to happen. We're trying to shape the narrative. They're going to control what's going to happen. That's why my dumbass does reports on West Africa, and you think I'm a fool for doing it, and you don't see any reason for why I'm doing it. It's because in about a year, you're going to say, holy shit, only geniuses saw this coming. And then you'll watch my channel. And then maybe I'll get monetized.
We will have a single currency and let it be time bound. And in my view, in the next 10 to 15 years, we have a single currency so that we don't denominate it with other foreign currencies. Then we can begin to talk meaningfully of a continent that is moving economically in the right direction. We can begin to talk about a continent that is talking about Agenda 2063, whose economy is not dependent upon a foreign currency. We can begin to talk about
an economy that's not dependent on a CDBC. I'm sorry, he didn't say that. He said a foreign currency. A CDBC is not an African currency.
Africa continental free trade area where somebody has a common currency which is used from Cape to Cairo, a common currency which is used from Addis Ababa to Dakar in Senegal, a common currency that is used in Kinshasa and also used in Marrakesh in Morocco. That is the kind of environment in which we should be operating, because currency is one of the keys that open the doors of economic liberation.
Wow, did he just say currency is one of the keys that open up economic liberation? Hold on, let's see what this means. Currency equals sovereignty. I've said that before. It's on tape. You can go back and look at my shit. CDBC equals slavery because it takes away the sovereignty. This whole 20-minute report is about how CDBC is a bullshit lie. It's a head game. It's a fake out. If we get a CDBC, that means we lost our constitution. Of course, we're not going to be as free as Africa, a third world continent, supposedly. We won't be as free as them if we get a CDBC. Quit wishing for slavery, people. Wake up. 20 cups of coffee if you freaking need to. And get involved with synapses pathways moving in your head logically for what's actually going to happen. Don't listen to Joe Biden and Trump. They don't have a fucking clue what's going on. No, excuse me, they do know. They're fooling you. Okay? We're not going to have a CDBC unless we lose our constitution. The talk of that is a bunch of bullshit, and I'm tired of hearing it. I wish people would get intelligent and learn the facts. If we have a CDBC and Africa goes on a gold standard, we're dead. Because their money system's going to be better than ours, and we're going to lose out. Damn the bad luck. Let's wish all of that for America. Let's push that way. No, luckily there are smart people in America that'll throw out the lie to get you people to believe that we're going to a CDBC when the rest of the world's not. The SWIFT system's been around. BRICS system is going to be like a SWIFT system. It's not a currency. It's not a currency. And even if it was a currency, Africa's going to blow it out of the water and make it go away too. Anyhow, we'll see what happens. You guys have a nice night. Enjoy the New Year's.